I'd say one of the most common questions I get regarding the C55 is my list of modifications that I have done to the car. And I did make a video about 4 to 5 years ago on this topic, but since then, those are my very early days of being in front of the camera, and now that I have a lot more experience going over things like this, I thought I'd redo that video so I can answer some of those questions that you guys might have about this car. So if you guys are new to the channel, thank you so much for stopping by and checking out this video. If you guys enjoy it, definitely consider subscribing because I post all sorts of automotive related content related to this car, my go-kart, and also my Corvette build that I'm really going to be starting on and making good headway on in the near future. But like I said, my plan for this video is to not take too long, but I want to go through the complete modification list that I have done to this car because I've had it for about 8 years now. I got this car in September of 2012, so it's been almost 8 years of owning this car, and over those 8 years I've done a number of different things to different aspects of the car, both aesthetics and performance mods. So anybody out there who is looking to mod or purchase a C55 to mod, this would be a great video to look that up because I know there's not a ton of content on these cars, so I'm happy to fill you guys in as much as I can. My plan for this video is to be as brief and to the point as possible, but basically I'm going to start from the front and work my way to the back of the car, and you know, in that process I can go over aesthetic and also performance mods. And I will be going over all the mods, of course, that I have actually done to the car, but I'll talk about some, briefly, I'll talk about some other mods that you can do to the car that I have not necessarily done, either because of price or just various factors. But another great guy to subscribe to on YouTube for C55 content is my buddy Anderzen Garage. He posts a lot of really cool videos on the C55, and he has done some mods to the car that I haven't, so definitely go check his page out. Link to his page will be in the description because he does a lot of cool stuff with his silver C55. Alright, to start, so let's go at the very front of the car. The first aesthetic mod that I have done to the car in the very front is the carbon fiber front lip. Now I did this pretty much right when I first got the car. The carbon fiber lip is attached via two methods, the first being self-tapping screws, and the second being double-sided tape. So I kind of have two methods of attachment for that. I got that lip off of eBay. There was no particular brand or anything, but it was about 300 to 350 bucks. So that was the first mod, was the carbon fiber front lip. Second mod that's easiest to see right here is my aftermarket wheels. Now these wheels are Avant Garde M510s in Dolphin gray, and the front and rear are different offsets as well as different widths. Now I can never remember which offset is which, so I think the front is plus 35 and the rear is plus 40, but don't quote me on that. I'll double check myself and put the correct specs in the description. But again, yeah, these are Avant Garde M510s. I actually got them through a retailer or distributor called fmwheels.com. Great guys over there, so that's where I got these for this car. So go check them out if you're interested. They've been awesome wheels. I just love the look of them. It's a very cool look that it looks close to factory, but it's different enough to know that like the car's got some extra kick to it. So they're really cool wheels. Like I said, plus 35 in the front, I think, and plus 40 in the rear. The fronts are at least the tires are 235 inches wide and the rears are 275s. And I do get questions regarding the wheels and tire setup. Do I get rubbing? Unfortunately, in the back with this wheel and tire setup, I do. So right now I have Nitto Invos in the front and not Avant Gardes. I have Hankook Ventus V12 Evos in the rear. When I had Nittos on all four corners, I actually didn't have as much rubbing issues in the rear with those 275 wide tires, because on the Nittos, the sidewall was actually more curved. With the Hankooks, it's more of a square sidewall. So the only time I really get rubbing is if the car hits a really big like dip when I'm going on like freeway speeds, or if I have people sitting in the back seat, I get quite a bit of rubbing, and that's with running a 5mm spacer as well. The wheels have been great wheels. They are very reasonably priced for a Mercedes, and I haven't had any issues with like cracking or bending, and I've definitely hit a good amount of potholes over the years of having these wheels on the car. I got these installed in about 2014, so I've had them on for about 6 years, most of the time I've had this car actually. So the next mod that I did was related to the brakes. I did upgrade to carbon ceramic pads, not rotors, pads, because they are a lot better, they have better life, and they are much less dirty. Ever since I switched to these pads, the amount of brake dust on the front wheels has decreased exponentially. So if you go with new brakes, try and get carbon ceramic pads. They have not had any issues squeaking, and like I said, the brake dust has significantly decreased. So the next mods I have done on the car are related to the engine and more performance related mods. The first being I installed a RENNtech carbon fiber airbox. Now these airboxes are specifically for the naturally aspirated M113. So if you have a C55, a CLK55, or an SLK55, double check, but I'm pretty sure this RENNtech airbox will work for you. And in the description below, if I forget to mention it in the video, I'll try and put prices, approximate prices of all the parts and mods that I have done. But I'm pretty sure from RENNtech new, those run about $1,500 for that. It's a full carbon fiber airbox, really nice quality airbox. It basically increases the capacity, and I believe it's supposed to increase your crank horsepower by about 5 to 10 horsepower. So it's a nice little bump in power, but the biggest difference that I felt when installing this airbox on the car was the liveliness and the throttle response. I don't know what just the extra amount of air that can go through the intake really increased the throttle response, and the car was just a lot more, just felt more alive and maybe a little less sluggish. So that was a really cool mod. Definitely a lot of money for kind of a little bit of power gain, but if you have the means, it's very cool to do that. Next mod related to performance are the short tube headers that I have installed. Now on this car, I have RENNtech short tube headers. They are also kind of a pricey mod. They're a bunch of different companies that produce short tube headers for the at least the M113 like naturally aspirated cars, but also the M113K, so the compressor cars like the E55, SL, S55, and things of that nature. So with this car, you can do long tube headers, but depending on the state you live in, the long tube headers will completely delete your catalytic converters. So for me, being in California, that would be a no-go to pass smog. So with the short tube headers, you do maintain your primary cats, so you are good to go for smog. With these headers, it does add, I believe, a decent amount of power. I'd have to double check, but I believe the short tube headers add about 15 to 20 horsepower. So that's a nice little bump in power. And this is all crank horsepower, not wheel horsepower, so just factor in the losses to the drivetrain. But yeah, so about 15 to 20 horsepower increase, again, helps with the throttle response, because just like with the intake sucking in more air on the front end of the engine, the headers help to pass more air out the back end. So you just get overall better flow. So it really just helps the liveliness of the throttle response and overall just response of the car not being as sluggish as it would be stock. Not saying the car is super sluggish stock, but it definitely just improves it from the stock figures and feel of the car. The last thing with the headers is, of course, you get a glorious sound upgrade. The biggest thing with these headers is it's nice because when you're just cruising around at idle or at low RPMs, not really gassing it, the car is pretty subdued and quiet. But the minute you get on it and you're in the high RPMs, it gets a really beefy and not bad raspy, but a good raspy tone like the 63 series AMGs. That just makes this car sound so amazing. So if you guys haven't checked out my most recent sound video on this car, that will also be in the description below. I did a bunch of accelerations and flybys with this car to kind of demonstrate the sound both inside and outside of the car. So again, with those headers, they are a pricey mod. I believe the RENNtech short tubes go anywhere between $1,500 and $2,000, possibly even more. I don't know how much RENNtech is producing them now since these cars are a little bit older, but there are a bunch bunch of other companies that make headers for these cars. One of them is MBH and the other is Eurocharged actually. So if you're interested for a little bit more affordable headers, definitely go check them out as well. But that has been an awesome mod. I was thankful enough to get those headers off of a buddy of mine. Has a shop in San Diego here where he actually had a C55 track car, and because he was no longer worried about it being road legal, he switched to long tubes, so I took the short tubes off his car, so that was pretty cool. But yeah, those two RENNtech mods will get you a nice bump in power and overall increased throttle response of the car. Next performance mod I did is another common one. It is a ECU remap. This is done by a company called Eurocharged, and I did this right around when I first had the car as well. I kind of wish I waited maybe a little bit instead of doing this right away, but to kind of truly feel the difference. But this was an ECU remap or flash, and I believe since this is a naturally aspirated car, you obviously can't mess with boost numbers, but I believe they just do adjust the air-fuel ratio to add about, I believe, 20 to 25 crank horsepower with an ECU remap. And it's a great company, Eurocharged. I liked working with them. I basically chose to take the ECU out, shipped it to, I believe, Houston. That's one of their big facilities, and then they shipped it back with the map back on it. And it was a pretty easy mod. And definitely after I got that mod, it was I did believe that I felt the power increase, but it was hard to tell initially because I did it so early on in owning the car. But not to say that Eurocharged is the only company that does ECU remaps on these Mercedes M113 ECUs. There might be some other companies out there. The ECU remap is pretty quick and easy. It doesn't take a lot, and it is, I think, of all the mods, it's one of the biggest bumps in horsepower for roughly the lowest cost. I believe, I'll have to double check, but I believe the remap is around $600. That was back in 2012, so I'll have to double check, but you're looking somewhere around there for cost of that. So the next two performance mods I'm just going to lump together because they're very similar and their function and what I had to do to mod them. They are related to the exhausts, and so that kind of helps with performance. The first being I deleted the secondary cats. So this car actually has two sets of catalytic converters, the primary and secondary. Primaries, like I said earlier, you got to keep in order to maintain smog legal, at least in California. I don't know the laws in other states in the US and around the world, but so I deleted the secondary cats and basically just did a straight Y pipe. So that really helped to open up the sound. The only downside with doing the secondary cat delete is you do get a little bit of smell. So under hard acceleration, you will kind of smell like not like a bad exhaust smell and not like a nauseating one, but it definitely is noticeable that you've deleted your secondary cats, and that might also be a result a little bit of the headers as well. The one thing I forgot to mention about the RENNtech headers is that it's really cool because depending on which smog shop you go to in California, some are more nitpicky than others on the visual, but the RENNtech headers look very close to stock, so it's not going to throw up or raise any eyebrows when you're at a smog check and they're doing a visual. But getting back to the other mod, so secondary cat delete and straight pipe replacement, and then the second was a resonator delete and straight pipe replacement. So the resonator is basically a secondary muffler on the car, and it kind of helps to, I believe, drone out certain frequencies of exhaust sound, especially at freeway speeds. And again, this is another common question I get with my exhaust setup is, do you get droning at freeway speeds with the resonator and secondary cat delete? And the answer is yes, but only slightly. So if you're hanging around 2,000 RPM, you get a little bit of drone, but I did, most of this time I've owned this car, it's been a weekend car, but I did daily drive it for about a year and a half or so, and it's definitely manageable. I mean, if you have the radio on, even at a low volume, it kind of tunes it out, but being a car guy, you kind of like hearing that sound anyways, but everyone's a little different. So a little bit of drone, but not an overbearing amount that makes the car undrivable as a daily driver. Those exhaust mods, or that exhaust setup with the headers, the secondary cat delete, the resonator delete, produce a really awesome sound that, like I said, is pretty subdued and quiet when you're just cruising around, just running errands. You don't want to be loud, but it is a awesome exhaust sound to really open up the car, give you some more power, and if you're really romping on it at high RPMs, it just sounds amazing. So like I said, check out my sound video if you want to get some details on what it sounds like with this exhaust setup. Definitely one thing that I want to mention is I definitely don't recommend doing a straight pipe, like complete straight pipe, and deleting the actual mufflers in the rear of the car. There's two mufflers. The car basically goes from the two headers, obviously from each bank, down to a Y to one. It's a single exit or a single pipe all the way in the midsection, and then right around the rear def it splits again as another Y pipe going into two mufflers. And before I bought this car, I actually test drove a black C55 that had just had a crazy straight pipe system, and it sounded awesome. It was really loud and rowdy, and it was really cool, but it was a little much, and with deleting the mufflers you definitely get a very noticeable drone. So just keep that in mind if you're thinking about deleting the mufflers on this car. And also, I don't know how that affects the visual inspection for smog. So now we're getting towards the rear of the car here. The last kind of aesthetic mod that I had done was a carbon fiber rear diffuser, and that is kind of pairs nicely with the carbon fiber front lip. I also got that off eBay. It's attached it the same way with self-tapping screws and double-sided tape, and the gap between the actual bumper and the rear diffuser I sealed with a little bit of silicone, so it kind of just made it look like a nice clean install. But not really a performance mod, but it is a nice aesthetic mod to kind of just add the car, give the car a little bit of an updated look with the carbon fiber. Again, I got that piece off eBay, which I believe is around $300-ish, maybe wrong, but it wasn't like a name brand part or anything. It was just a general part off eBay. You have to make sure that you get the one that is for the C55, because obviously the C55 has a quad exhaust. All the other C classes have just a dual exhaust on the driver's side. Now, addressing another really common question I get regarding to the stance of the car. A lot of people ask, with this wheel and tire setup, am I on an aftermarket suspension or lowering springs? And I am actually not. This is complete stock suspension setup. No adjustment in shocks or springs or coilovers. So it's pretty nice to be able to run this in stock setup. You know, there are aftermarket coilovers, and I believe that H&R makes some lowering springs. If you really have a nice fat wallet, you can go with KW coilovers, but those are definitely pricey. So there's a number of options you can do and I believe Bilstein even makes some coilovers or shocks as well. So that is definitely an option to do, but just keep in mind when you're messing with aftermarket wheel and tire setups, like I said, you don't want to run into rubbing issues, because it just makes the car a little bit, to some degree, unusable, because in the setup I have now, sometimes I can't take multiple people in the car, because if I have a fully loaded car, even with two people in the back seat, it definitely gets pretty scrapey, so to say. The last aesthetic mods that I actually forgot to mention is, and it's definitely aesthetic, is that I wrapped the roof gloss black. It was a pretty easy thing to do, only took a few hours, but if you have basic skills to put on vinyl wrap, the hardest part was definitely tucking it around the side, the sunroof, and all the trim on the windshield, back glass, and the side trim on the roof as well. But if you got some patience and some basic skill with vinyl wrapping, doing the black roof is kind of a cool touch that I think really modernizes the car. It gives it almost like a look that it has like the new kind of like panoramic style roofs that are mostly all black anyway. So again, that's a cool mod that's pretty easy to do, and I believe ups the look of the car overall. Last part of the video, I just kind of want to go over some other mods that you can do to the car that I haven't done, either for price or just haven't gotten around to them. But like I said, another guy to check out is Anderzen Garage, because he does a lot of cool mods that I haven't done yet. So definitely check him out. But the other one, the first being the big one, is a supercharger kit. I believe RENNtech makes one, and a few other companies. Kleeman also, if they're still in business, actually, I don't even know. So that's a really cool upgrade, but it's very involved. I mean, you're looking probably $8,000 to $9,000, possibly even more for the kit install, and I don't know if you might have to beef up the engine a little bit, like the internals, to handle the added boost pressure. But that mod will definitely give you the most power possible when modding this car. The next big mod is a Qualf LSD, so limited slip diff, so you can add that, and it'll help you if you're looking at drag racing or just better launches. The LSD is a good option for that, but definitely a little pricey. Another cool mod that you can do that Anderzen Garage just did was you can actually upgrade your paddle shifters. So on this car, the paddle shifters are just kind of like two buttons on the side of the steering wheel. and you can actually upgrade and get actual paddles that extend above the steering wheel so you can see them when you're not pressing them. I don't know the exact procedure of doing that mod, but like I said, check out Anderzen Garage because he just did that to his C55. Another mod you can do that I haven't done yet is a strut tower braces, both in the front and rear. I believe Anderzen Garage also did these, so they seem to be a pretty quick and easy mod. I haven't done them, so definitely go check out his channel on that, but it would definitely be a cool mod and a functional mod to add some stiffness to the car and rigidity that would definitely help if you plan on tracking the car and or autocrossing the car. And of course, there's a bunch of mods with these cars that I might be leaving out, but the last kind of one that I can think of are performance engine and transmission mounts. I believe a company up in Washington, or there might be a bunch of different ones, produce a more stiff race-oriented engine mount that is I don't believe it's fluid filled. The stock engine mounts are fluid filled, so they have a little bit of room for give and flex, but and obviously decreases and dampens vibration. But the performance ones will give you more stiffness with your drivetrain, but you might feel a little bit more vibration in the car. Another common mod that people have done and I have seen done that I haven't necessarily done yet are a big brake kit. Now, if you've got a fat wallet again, you can go for, I believe, Brembo's. Brembo makes a kit that fits on here. RENNtech, I believe, also makes a kit, which they might also be Brembo's. I don't know how that works. But another common one that might be a little bit more affordable is I've seen people upgrade to the larger E55, S55, SL55 brakes. So I believe that gets you a 6-piston caliper in the front and a 4 in the rear. Also is cool a little bit aesthetically, and you get bigger rotors as well. So again, if you're looking at possibly tracking the car and or autocrossing it, a larger brake kit with slotted rotors might be a good choice to upgrade for you as well. So that pretty much sums up all of the mods that I have done to this car. I guess actually the only last one that I have done that I haven't talked about yet is I didn't do this actually. The car was like this when I got it, was HID headlights and fog lights, so they're a cool upgrade. If I were to have done them myself, I would have done them a little differently with maybe the projector style headlights, because they are definitely very bright, and I feel bad sometimes when I'm driving at night because it's pretty bright, because I've driven in a different car and I was driving behind or in front of this car, and they're very bright. So if you do aftermarket HIDs or LED headlight upgrades, make sure to do them projector style so it kind of focuses the beam and doesn't scatter it everywhere. But anyways, so I think that's going to sum up this video with the mods that I have done for this car. It's not a huge long list, but it's definitely a decent amount. With these cars, basically you can mod it to a certain price point, and then you kind of plateau at performance until if you really start throwing in money into the car, then you can get into the LSD, the supercharger, and a lot more big, more expensive mods. And sometimes you got to get a little creative with this car. You got to dig deep sometimes, because there's very limited number of companies that produce mods for this car, at least from my experience. But again, if I left any mods out, it's not on purpose, but I just might not have thought about them or forgot them. So if you guys have done something to your C55, or you know of someone that has, drop it in the comments below, and that might really help someone out. I'd actually say one of the best performance mods that you can do to this car, or just any car in general, it's not particularly this car, for handling, is getting a good, decent set of tires. If you have the budget, the Michelin Pilot Sport 4S's, or I don't even know if they make the Super Sports in this size, but Michelin obviously make great tires. They're a little pricey. Nittos I've had mixed reviews with, experience on tread life and stuff like that, but I've had the Hancooks on this car for a while, and they are great. They're very grippy when the road is a little bit hot, or you're driving the car, you know, more spirited per se. They get good temperature in them, and they barely break loose. It's hard to get them to break loose once you get good temps in them. So another big mod that's often overlooked is just getting a good set of tires for the car. So thank you guys so much for tuning in and checking out this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it and learned a little bit more about the C55 platform and how to possibly mod your C55 you have or you're looking at purchasing. So if you guys have any questions about the mods or the car itself, just other general questions, leave them in the comment section below, and I'm always happy to answer them for you. So other than that, thanks again guys for watching, and I will see you in the next one.